carrying nothing. So we don't have quite the stability because we don't have people keeping it from going side to side. People at the feet are like, woo, 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 we're just having a great day. These people up here are like, oh my gosh, this guy's so heavy. The advantage to this is that you can add extra people in here. Does that make the job easier for everyone? Particularly if we're talking about a really heavy person, right? Team leaders. Who's the team leader in this setup?
Person at the head.
One of the people at the head, right?
I believe it's supposed to be the person on the right.
Yeah, right and head.
Okay, so we have our team leader right here. What does our team leader do for our team?
Gives commands.
Gives commands. What kind of commands can we expect from that leader?
Ready, lift. Stop.
Ready, lift. Stop.
Go.
Ready to move.
Ah!
Lower.
Slower, faster. Watch your feet. Don't drop your patient. Whatever type of command needs to come to help move our patient on our backboard, that comes from our team leader. Our team leader is always going to be a person located where?
At the head of the patient.
At the head of the patient. Why is that important?
Direct communication with the patient.
Communication with the patient. Why else?
Well, it's a standard that we all know, so that when we're working with different personnel, we always knew that that's the bucket spot. That's the person who's going to be making those commands.
Okay, when we're working with people who are not part of our agency, we still know who's in charge. Why else is that important? Why are they located at the head? Why did we decide the head instead of the feet?
Visibility.
Visibility of what?
You can see where the patient's going to go and what terrain the group is going to encounter. So he gets depicted to the direction. And of course you're guarding the patient's head, most important.
Okay.
Usually transport the patient head first, so the person at the head is obviously going to be in the lead, so they're going to take them wherever they want them to go.
Okay. If we're thinking about the person at the head being in charge, what other responsibility does that person have besides watching where we're going?
Vital sign type stuff. Like
Yeah, they're responsible for keeping an eye on the patient too, right? So if all of a sudden we recognize that there's a problem with the airway of this patient, whose responsibility is it to fix that? Or to stop the move or whatever so we can get it fixed?
The leader.
Yeah, it's our team leader's responsibility. So more than just coordinating the move, the team leader has the overall responsibility for patient care. Does that make sense? Okay. What is the difference between an emergency move and an urgent move?
an emergency move is basically no safety precautions are taken. Like you're not putting them on a board, you're not putting them on anything. You're basically just grabbing them and moving them.
You gotta get them out there because like cars on fire or
Gunshots
their life is in danger.
An emergency move is a life-saving move.
Okay, so an emergency move is a life-saving move. There are few precautions involved. By precautions, what do we mean?
Stabilizing C-spine.
Yep. Do we still take our own safety precautions for ourselves?
Yes.
Of course we do. Because what?
We're
Safety
safety first.
first.
Rescue safety first. Okay. If you think a patient might have a spinal injury and you need to do an emergency move, there are a couple of moves that you can use to kind of help prevent aggravation of their spinal injury. One of these is the clothing drag. We talked about this a little earlier. How can this help prevent aggravation of that injury?
It's pulling them in a straight line.
pulling them in a straight line, and we're supporting their neck and their head fairly close to our body with the clothes that we've got a hold of at their shoulders, right? Okay, how about a blanket drag?
Same idea.
Same idea. We've rolled up the edges of our blanket, it's tucked underneath their body. We're trying as best we can to keep neutral inline stabilization as we pull them. In an emergency move, if we can use these drags, great. If we can't use these drags, well, at least we considered them. What about an arm drag?
Less protection, but still, I mean, good for the spine, but not for the neck.
Yeah, if you've got an unconscious patient, you're gonna bump their head because they're gonna be hanging on you.
And they call it an arm-to-arm drag here in our book, but that's not what you guys called it earlier. Where you get underneath the patient's shoulders and wrap your arms around their body. What do you call
Dummy
it?
drag.
Pardon?
Dummy drag.
Dummy drag.
Comes from our firefighter skill challenge where you have to pick the dummy up in that fashion and drag them backward.
It's not very politically correct, but
That's true. Wouldn't necessarily use that in front of the patient.
If you have to remove a patient, an unconscious patient from a vehicle and you're by yourself, you're going to move their legs, clear the pedals, rotate them so their back is toward the open door, put your arms under their shoulders and through their armpits, and then grab them, pull them out. The same drag, but from the seat and out. Okay, what is an urgent move?
When you need to be quick, but you can take a few more precautions.
You have time to take a few more precautions. So, if they have an altered LOC, or if they're in shock, or something like that, you may want to do an urgent move. If a patient needs to be urgently moved, then you should use rapid extrication. If they're in a place where they need to be rapidly moved. What's the difference between rapid extrication and using a backboard or a KED?
straps.
Straps. What else?
In a rapid extrication, you can, if they're seated, you can actually lay them down. I don't know if that's allowed with, I think, a KED, I guess.
Okay.
Because you're not using it, you're just...
Rapid extrication is used if there's a hazard and you don't have time to use the proper extrication equipment. So we don't have time to use a KED, what you were saying earlier. We don't have time to use a KED, we don't have time to use a backboard, so we're going to remove them rapidly. So instead of going through the process of putting a KED on or a spine board, which takes 6 to 8 minutes if you're doing it appropriately, okay, we're going to, in most cases with rapid extrication, we're going to at least put a collar on them and then turn them and slide them out onto a board. The problem with this rapid extrication is that it increases the risk of spinal damage if there is a potential injury. So we don't want to use this unless there's a problem that requires us to get that patient out of the way. So if there's a vehicle that is on fire, or there's a hazardous material nearby, or if you can't assess the patient because you can't get to their airway, or if they're in the way of you being able to get to another patient. Okay? We don't like to use them without, we don't like to use rapid extrication if we can help it. But sometimes you have to.
It's a risk versus gain question.
Yeah, risk versus gain, that's a good way to put it. Okay. Okay, so we talked about emergency and urgent. Maybe I can change this to emergent, because then they sound the same. emergent and urgent. And what about non-emergent?
Taking
All
your
safety
time, all
precautions.
precautions being taken.
Okay, we're going to take our time. And we can afford to take our time because everything is safe. We're not worried about whether or not the patient is in danger. We're not worried about whether or not someone else is in danger. We're not worried about whether or not we are in danger. We can take the time to do it appropriately, and so we do. So what are some of the non-urgent moves that we can use?
Just on the stretcher. I mean,
Okay.
if the patient walks to the stretcher and then we wheel them away.
Okay?
Or you take the time to use the KED board, KED device, or any of the other things that we do. We're doing it with the full precautions. Yeah.
Full spinal immobilization.
Okay? We're doing everything that we can in order to treat our patient correctly. We can take our time, we can follow our protocols, we can use the appropriate equipment. Remember all the equipment that we listed at the beginning of this lecture? We can use anything and everything that we need to use in order to make sure that our patient is well and appropriately cared for, because we have the time. What defines the difference between emergent and urgent?
I'll say emergent is there's a direct hazard to their life and safety, and urgent is there's a possible hazard, I guess it would be.
Good. Emergent is, this is an emergency. If I don't get them out of here, they're going to die, right? Urgent is, there's something that's causing me to think that the scene may potentially become unsafe. Can you see the difference? All right. Do we have questions about Chapter 8? Anyone? No one? Okay. Do you have questions about any of the other chapters that we've already covered?